Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and this is my weekly reading wrap-up. It is Monday, December 30th, and I finished a book last night. I stayed up way too late reading it. So that was The 12 Sleighs of Christmas and by Jacqueline Frost, and I enjoyed it. It was a cozy mystery. This is apparently the same author who writes under a couple of different names, and she has like some cat-themed cozy mysteries and an apple cider farm themed mysteries for fall. So she writes a whole bunch of different cozy mystery series, and this was my first time reading anything by this author, and I enjoyed it. It was a fun little cozy mystery, and it had all of the Christmas everything. So checked all the Christmas boxes. So if you are looking for a cozy Christmas read, here you go. It's got all of that there. And there is a tiny little bit of romance. It's not really a big part of the story. It's really just about this young lady who is coming back home after a failed engagement. Her fiance jilted her, and so she's coming back home, and her parents own a Christmas tree farm, and they do all of these fun, crazy activities throughout the month of December. And of course, someone is murdered, and so she is trying to investigate the murder or whatever. Cozy mystery is not my favorite genre of all time, but it is fun to sit back and read one, especially when you're looking for something that has all of the Christmas atmosphere. It's all in here. If you're looking for a Christmas atmosphere book, which now we're after Christmas, but it definitely gave that in spades. So that was a great read for this time of year, and I enjoyed it. No complaints about it. It was a fun little cozy mystery. And I'm currently reading Mistletoe Season. I had started reading it on Hoopla from the library, so digitally, but then I was at my sister's yesterday and I saw she had a copy and she had just finished reading it. So she lent me the physical copy, which is so much more fun to read from. I read the first one already, which was Return to Mistletoe by Kathleen Fuller, and was a little bit of sort of a second chance kind of romance idea. And it was good. It was very good. It was the first time I'd ever read anything by Kathleen Fuller, and I enjoyed it. I wasn't blown away or like, oh wow, this author's amazing, I want to read everything she wrote, but I enjoyed it. And now I'm currently reading The Mistletoe Prince by Basham, which is a novella that goes along with her Skymar series, which I'm going to be reading Positively Penelope in a couple of days here. So it goes along with that story. So I am really enjoying that one at the moment. Basham is just really a great writer. Love her story. Love her storytelling and the way that she really pulls you into the story. She's just really good at it. And I'm looking forward to trying Say No to Mistletoe by Sheila Roberts. Sheila Roberts' new book, which I've not been able to get a hold of, and I may have to read it in January because I'm like, I don't know, 6th in line or something at my library, is The Merry Matchmaker. But it's based on Emma and by Jane Austen. So I really want to read that one. And so this will give me a taste of the author to see if I like her writing or not. So I'm going to be reading this. We are going to be driving a few hours away this afternoon, so I will have some passenger princess time in the car to do a little reading. So I am going to bring along the Mistletoe Season book, and I'm also going to bring The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon because I need to read that in order to turn it back to the library later this week. So I need to get that read, but I kind of want to finish up any other Christmas reads. I might see what I have on Hoopla because I have 1 or 2 more downloads for this month. And I may also bring Skipping Christmas by John Grisham because it's bothering me that I watched the adaptation, but I haven't read the book yet. And that would fit a spot in both of the December reading challenges that I'm doing, the Tinsel and Tales and the Very Vintage Christmas. So, and I think it would be the only spot that's left on both of them, I think. So, or at least on one of them for sure, on the Tinsel and Tales. So I just need to do it so I can cross them off. Because also, I want to know if I want to keep the book or take it out of my Christmas collection, because it's going to be time to pack up the Christmas books soon here. So that is what I have got going on this week. So I'm going to be kind of phasing out of my Christmas reads and into my January epistolary and classic reads, which I'm very excited about and looking forward to doing. So Right now, though, I need to go and get a bunch of stuff done. So I will see you all next time. Bye. Hello, it is now Wednesday, right? January 1st. Happy New Year's, everybody. We went on a quick little getaway to Pennsylvania the past couple of days, and it didn't turn out quite as we had planned for it to turn out, but we had a good time. We went to a place called Cozy R's Christmas Village the first night, and I really enjoyed it. My kids thought it was a little hokey and perhaps childish, but there's a certain age where, you know, you lose your delight in some things, but then when you get older to another certain age, it comes back a little bit. So they're in that age where they just thought it was not cool and hokey, but I enjoyed it. It was a family farm where back in the 50s, the parents had just started adding to their Christmas light decorations to the point where they became quite famous in the community, and then they just kept adding stuff every year. And so now that's basically what they do. And they just have light displays. A lot of them are, they're unique, like one of a kind. It's not the kind, you know, like when you go through those drive-through light displays, they seem to be, you know, very often like mass manufactured ones, and everybody has the same ones. You know, with the reindeer flying across the road or whatever, you know, the kind of things. And they're fun to see, but it's the typical stuff. These are all, I'm not sure about all of them, but a lot of them were handmade, not necessarily by the family who ran the farm, but I believe that they hired out local welders and artisans to craft the frames that they put the lights into. And all of the lights they used were like these large, like vintage light bulbs. And they had a lake in front of their house, and so they had a lot of lights around that kind of reflected onto the lake. That was really pretty. And they also had these, all along the fence posts, they had these hand-painted wooden signs, and that all had different Christmas scenes. And there were so many of them, there were hundreds, and every single one was different. And I don't know who has the constant creativity to come up with brand new ones. If it were me, I would have had like 5 designs and just rotated them through the whole park, but they did every single one a different design. Wreaths, snowmen, snowflakes, nativity scenes, whatever. All kinds of gingerbread men, all kinds of different Christmas details. And most of them had lights fitted into the picture as well, like they became part of the picture. And what I really loved was they had these scenes painted on like a board that was meant to look like a page. So they had various Christmas stories, like A Christmas Carol and The Nutcracker and The Grinch, and they hand painted scenes from those stories and made it look like large pages, and then had that set up so that you read the story as you walk through. So I really enjoyed that. And then they had these tableaux that were like these little sheds with large windows that you could look in, and like large picture windows, and you could look in and see the tableau that they had set up there with mannequins and dolls or whatever, various different Christmas scenes. Granted, it's mostly of interest, I think, to smaller children and families with small children. And then older people who are a little nostalgic, and people who can appreciate something that is handmade, unique, and one of a kind that you won't see anywhere else, which was what I was really enjoying and reveling in. So we did that on Monday night. And then on Tuesday, our plan was to go to Hershey Park and stay until they closed at 9 so that we could catch their whole light display that they do at Christmas time, which we've done before and have really enjoyed. We had looked at their schedule before we made our plans, and on their website it said 12 to 9, but we didn't click on the PDF that had the calendar for the whole Christmas season. We didn't click on that PDF. And then at some point between the last time we looked at the calendar and Monday, they updated their actual website that we had looked at for the dates and reflected the accurate schedule, which was 12 to 4 on Tuesday because it was New Year's Eve. Obviously, they were closing early, which I totally get, but we had planned on them being open until 9, so we only had 4 hours there. But in the end, it worked out well. My husband wasn't feeling well. He has some kind of cold, and 4 hours was the most really that he needed it to be out there doing that. And also they didn't have as many rides open because of the season, and we did everything that we wanted to in the 4 hours there. So that was fine. So then we came home, and because my husband wasn't feeling well, there was a party we could have gone to, but we just laid low, stayed home. My older son watched a football game. My younger son plays a few video games. I did some reading. I updated my reading journal, and we had a very low-key ringing in of the new year, and that suited me just fine this year. It was great. Very cozy and relaxing. So I did update my reading journal. I added a couple spreads and I updated a couple. So my epistolary January, I don't know if I had showed you before, but I put in my graphic for epistolary January, but then I just added a few stickers. On this side, I will record the books that I actually read. And then I added a page for our Jane Austen January, printed off this little painting of Jane online, and then I couldn't fit the whole graphic for our reading schedule on my page the way that I had it printed, so I just cut it up in the books and set them out like that. So that is that spread. And then I was inspired by a couple of different people. I think it was Katie at Paperbacks and Ponytails was talking about her around the world readathon that she does. And she was recapping her 2024 year and listing all of the places that she had visited through books. And then Essie was talking about a very similar thing about books that she had read set in different places. And I think there were one or two other, there were multiple channels who were talking about the places that they had visited and or thinking about in the coming year reading books that are set in different places and tracking where they would visit. So I just had this idea that I would just put some maps, and it wouldn't be like an official challenge or anything. I'm not aiming for or planning to read books set in different places, but just to track where I go in my reading and the adventures I take in my reading. So I did a United States map and I did a world map, and I put those two spreads in my book. So this is the United States map. So basically, when I read a book set in one of these states, I will color in that state. And that's all I'm going to do. I didn't leave space to track the titles of the books or anything. I might regret that in the future, but I just didn't feel like taking that much space in my journal. I just kind of wanted to see where I go in my books. And then I have the world map here. And on this one, I will do the same thing. If I read a book set in a country, I will color it in. Now, obviously, I'm going to read books, more than one book set in certain places. Like England is going to be one of the first ones colored in, right? And that's okay. Once I have read that, I will read more from that country, but I'll just color it in the first time. This is just to see where my books take me in general, not really to track a challenge, you know, how many times did I go to England or whatever. So I added those couple pages to my reading journal last night. And now that it is actually January, I'm going to start filling in all of my January reading challenges and goals. Now, I did get some reading done. As anticipated, we spent quite a bit of hours on the road the past couple of days, and I did not have to drive. So I finished reading the novellas in Mistletoe season by Sheila Roberts, Kathleen Fuller, and Pepper Basham. I had never read anything by Kathleen Fuller or Sheila Roberts before, so I like novellas, Christmas novellas, because in particular, at Christmas time, I don't mind reading novellas. They're just short, sweet stories that's perfect for the amount of time that I have to read, and I enjoy it at Christmas time. Other times of the year, I'm not really keen on novellas, but at Christmas time, I enjoy it. So I also like that it gives me a taste of the author's writing style and lets me know if I want to read more by them. That is how I discovered Amanda Barrett. Now, I still haven't read a full-length novel by her, but a couple of years ago, I read a Christmas novella, and it really just stuck with me, and I really admire the writing style. So she's on my list of authors to try. Sheila Roberts, I may still read her most recent release, The Merry Matchmaker, I believe it's called, because it's based on the story of Emma. So I'm fifth in line or something at the library to get it. So when it comes in, I might just read it. We'll see if I'm in the mood for it or not. But having waited this long for it. Anyway, and I did enjoy her story in here. It wasn't probably my favorite. I wasn't blown away by the amazing writing style, but I did enjoy it. And it wasn't like laugh out loud funny, but but it definitely put a big smile on my face, and I just enjoyed the story. It was sweet and it was cute. It was a novella, so it moved a little too quickly for the sake of reality, but I think a full-length novel would be a little better. Anyway, the one that I enjoyed the most in this was Pepper Basham's, and this is an accompanying story to the Skymar series. So there are characters from the Skymar series. It makes the most sense if you have also read the other books in the Skymar series. I've read one so far, but I think it also works as a standalone by itself. So I really enjoyed it. That was called The Mistletoe Prince, and it was a really, really cute, heartwarming story. A little bit crossing the line into sappy for me at times. A little much even for a Christmas novella, but I still enjoyed it overall, and it made me smile. None of these were like laugh out loud, but they were definitely enjoyable, they were amusing, and they brought a smile to my face, and I enjoyed them at this time of year. And I also finished a book called The Christmas Letters, which made me happy because then I could cross off the epistolary spot on the Very Vintage Christmas bingo card, which is called Letters to St. Nick or something like that. Anyway, and I read The Christmas Letters, and I loved the concept of it. The author was Lee Smith. I read this through my library on it digitally. And the concept is that starting during World War II, a young mom is writing letters to her extended family at Christmas time, writing a letter. And so every year she writes this Christmas letter. And then when she is older, then her daughter takes over and writes about her family, etc. So you get the glimpse of these women as their family grows and as the generations grow, and the changing life and the changing landscape and the changing times. And it's all through the lens of their annual Christmas letter, which was really a neat concept, and I enjoyed that aspect of it very much. I really loved the first woman's letters. Those were really great. But then as the second woman wrote, it was like the author felt the need to cram every aspect of modern life into one family's experience. And it was depressing, to be honest, because in the end, the family dissolves. They completely leave all semblance of faith. They fall apart as a family and as people. The author seems to be purposely wanting to, I think she's just trying to honestly reflect changes in American culture during that time. But for those of us who prefer traditional conservative values, it's not really fun to read about people's lives literally falling apart and the choices that they made, very poor choices, and how they become so wandering. The first woman, in the family where she was, a very faith-filled woman, and she had a lot of purpose and resilience and hope, and she had a solid relationship with her husband. Neither one of them was perfect, but they loved each other and they worked together and they built a really strong family. And that was heartwarming to read, and I really enjoyed that part. But then when the younger generation comes through and then you're trying to throw all of these changes in American culture, it's not pretty. It was not a pretty picture, and it was kind of depressing to read and certainly not enjoyable. So the book fell apart about halfway through for me, and I really didn't like how it ended. The final letter was then from the third generation from that woman, and it was almost flippant, I guess. I don't know. It just devolved. And so I guess it's kind of, an accurate picture of what society became over the course of the 20th century in the United States. But anyway, that's a bit of a downer. And that is how I ended my New Year's reading. My 2024 and reading, a bit of a downer. But then I did pick up Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon, and I did not realize she's actually written a couple of other books. So one of them is about Anastasia, the Russian princess, which I'd be interested in reading, and the other one I don't know what it's about, but I would be interested in reading that one also. But anyway, this one, I am enjoying it so far. Not very far. I'm just like 5 or 6 chapters in, and really enjoying the writing style and the characters and the situation that's going on and a bit of mystery, and it's just very compelling so far. So I am enjoying that, and I need to read it by tomorrow. So I have some reading in front of me today. Thank goodness, it's a relaxing day. for the most part. So that is what I will be doing. So I will record it. Hello, it is, what is today? Friday, January 3rd. And I finished reading The Frozen River and I have thoughts about it. Hopefully this video doesn't get ridiculously long. But before I get to my thoughts about it, I have a little story. So I borrowed The Frozen River from the library, but I borrowed it from the library the next county over. And that is the county where I work, and the library I usually go to is literally right down the street from where I work. But when I borrowed it just before Christmas vacation, I wasn't thinking about the fact that I would not be working when it was due to be returned. And it's like a half-hour drive from my house, and I don't go that way unless I'm working typically. So today I was going to take my sister to her PT appointment, and then after that I was going to drop her off at work, which brought me closer to said library. So I thought, well, I will just, go a little bit out of my way and go bring the library book back to the library after I drop her off at work. But it is currently snowing outside as I am filming this on Friday afternoon. And earlier today, my sister was a little bit concerned about having to navigate in the snow with her scooter and her crutches. Like, I don't think it's supposed to snow a lot, but it's going to be enough to make the sidewalk slick and everything. And since she lives alone, nobody would be there to shovel her sidewalk for her, whatever. So her coworkers told her to stay home and stay safe. So she, after her PT appointment, she had a little bit of time to kill, and she was like, can we go get some hot chocolate? And I was like, twist my arm. So if you have been here on my channel since the spring, you may remember when we went to, well, you probably don't remember, so I'll remind you. When we went to Boston, we went to a coffee shop that a friend had recommended to me called Tate, which is a chain that sells Mediterranean style pastries and coffee. And they have some really yummy different coffee drinks. So they have since then opened up locations within driving distance of me, but I haven't been to any yet. So I said to my sister, well, we can go someplace locally for hot chocolate, or if you want to go into Fairfax County, we can do that. And I can drop off my library book and we can, go someplace over there. And she was like, well, actually, I wouldn't mind going to the Tate that opened up there. So I was like, again, twist my arm. So that was just the beginning of our ventures, because not only did we have some delicious hot chocolate and pastries, I got a black sesame latte, which tasted fine. It tasted good, but there was a bit of a grainy texture because of the sesame. So I'm not doing that again. I don't like texture, like kind of texture in my coffee. So I won't do that again, but it tasted fine. And I drank the whole thing. It was good. While we were there, I saw on Google Maps that there was an independent bookstore like 3 minutes from the coffee shop, 3-minute walk. And so I was like, hey, are you feeling up for a little jaunt over to this bookstore? Because she loves books too. And she was like, yeah. So we went to the bookstore, and it was the cutest little independent bookstore. And they had, in addition to books, obviously, they had the best like bookish gifts. And I was like, why did I not know about this place before Christmas? It totally would have been worth a special trip to support an independent bookstore and get some of these fantastic gifts. So sadly, I did not know about it until today, but it was very fun to go there today. And then afterwards, I dropped my book off at the library, literally right down the street from there. So that was a fun little jaunt, all due to the fact that I had to deliver my book to the library half an hour away, which was not well planned by me, but turned out to be quite serendipitous because we had us a lovely morning. Then I ran a couple errands and now I'm home, and I will tell you now about The Frozen River and my thoughts about it. If you go look on Goodreads, which I did, I always like to go on Goodreads and look at all of the reviews after I read a book, because sometimes before, but usually after I read a book, because especially if it's a book that I really have thoughts about, because I just want to catch other people's thoughts and see, like, kind of ping my thoughts off of other people and see where I stand in relation to where other people are with this book. And I discovered that probably it's maybe 80-20, 90-10 of people who love the book, the majority being loving it, 5 stars, gushing, everything about it was amazing. And then 1 stars, maybe 2 stars. The remaining, I don't know, 10 to 20% of people. So it was like a love it or hate it. There seemed to be very little 3-star. It was like, I love this book, or oh my goodness, this book was so awful. And what's funny for me is I wasn't really at either extreme. I could see why people gushed about it and really loved it and enjoyed it. There were a lot of things about it that I really loved and enjoyed also. And in some aspects, it was definitely a 5-star read. But at the same time, I totally could see what the 1-star reviews were saying. I totally saw their flaws, most of them that they mentioned, as I was reading the book. But those flaws didn't make me hate it. It brought the book down for me in rating. So I'm not a gushing 5-star, but it did not make me hate the book. So first, let's talk about what I did enjoy. I enjoyed the story itself and the fact that it was based on a real woman who sounds like a fascinating woman, Martha Ballard. And there is apparently a really wonderful biography about her that I now want to read. So I love that. I loved that the particular story in this book that focuses on in her life, like just a span of 6 months in this woman's long life and career as a midwife in Maine during the colonial and early American era. It focuses on this 6-month period during which there was a rape case in her town, and it involved one of her patients. And so she was a primary witness in the case. Not much is known on the record anymore. Most of what we know comes from her journal, and it's not a lot. It's just a few sentences and things here that are corroborated by what is in the public record, but there's not much more information in the public record available, even though there were, we went through the court system and everything at the time. That was very interesting. And I love stuff like that and stories like that and finding these little nuggets in people's history and learning about them. The writing and the storytelling was compelling enough, even though it wasn't written in my favorite sort of narrative style, but it brought me really into the story, and I was fully invested and immersed, and I kept reading, and it was a page turner, and I enjoyed it. So in that aspect of all of those things, definite 5-star. I also loved the relationship between the midwife and her husband as it was portrayed by the author, who we don't really know much about their actual relationship other than they had like 9 children and they seem to have been more or less happily married. I really love how the author portrayed the married couple, and the husband in the story reminded me a lot actually of my husband. And so I really enjoyed reading that. That was a very beautifully told, story about a couple who had been married. They're in their 50s now. They've been married 30 years and they'd had a lot of life together and a lot of history. There were some flashbacks and stuff, and I really enjoyed that. So now the things that I did not love that brought it down. So it's not a full 5-star read for me. I would settle on 3.5 to 4 stars probably. One is the dialogue was not accurate to the time. The conversation, the words that they used, the vernacular, and that takes me out of the time a little bit. And I don't like that in historical fiction. When I am reading historical fiction, my favorite kinds of historical fiction are the ones where the author is immersing you in the time and the place and the culture, and it's fully set in that. It's not just borrowing a story from that time and loosely set in it. Like, you are really in that culture. And it takes a great deal of research and skill on the part of the author to pull that off. But many authors manage to do it quite well. And this one, it missed the mark. There was current, maybe not slang, but current verbiage that was used that was definitely not in use in American English in early American times. And there was very little in the dialogue that would ever indicate that this was taking place a couple hundred years ago. Additionally, I want to look a little bit more into it before I can say this definitively, but I remember when I was pregnant with my children, I did a lot of research into midwifery and into the history and practice of childbirthing. And from what I remember, now that was 15 years ago, so my memory is sketchy, but from what I remember, the way that she describes childbirth in this book, and this is about a midwife, so she attends multiple births, right? It did not sound anything like traditional midwifery practice as I was familiar with it at all. So there's always the chance that my memory is bad, and it's been a long time since I've looked it up, but it did not jive with my memories of what midwife practice would have looked like back at that time. Although I did appreciate how the author was, in a way, celebrating midwifery in a very positive light, which I think the more often that happens in a popular novel, the better. And I actually appreciated how she pitted midwifery against the more modern practice of obstetrics. It wasn't an obstetrician, it was a general physician, but same idea. And I really appreciated that because she definitely portrayed midwifery in a positive light as opposed to the more modern intervention style of medicine that obstetrics is. And personally, I appreciated it because I think that the more women know about midwifery and delivering children in a traditional way, the better for their health and for the baby's health. But I appreciated that aspect, but it didn't ring true because it didn't seem like actual midwife practice to the time and the era, from what I know of it. The biggest drawback for me, besides those things, was the overly feminist tone to the narration of the story in general. Now, I could take probably an hour to discuss this because it's a very nuanced subject. I hesitate to bring this up because I feel like the few sentences I can say in this quick review would be not able to encapsulate all of the nuances and the issues that are brought up in this book adequately. And so it would be easy to come away with an inaccurate picture of how I feel about it and about what is true and good. To sum up the best I can without getting too deep into the weeds here, the actual issue in this book, which I did not realize was a primary theme in this book, I thought it was like a suspense story about a man who was murdered and they're trying to figure out who was murdered, which kind of is, but that wasn't actually part of the historical record. That's just kind of a narrative arc that she used to explore this story. The real story is a story of sexual assault and how it was dealt with and how it was managed. Then, I know, because it affects us today still. And the author was definitely exploring that as a theme. So there's that to start with. I appreciated that the author bringing light to such double standard regulations and laws that existed in that time, and I'm sure similar ones, exist today, but in that time, for example, if a girl had a baby out of wedlock, then she had to pay a fine. And when the baby was born, and depending on the situation, could be imprisoned up to 30 days. Now, ostensibly, all of these guidelines and regulations that were put in place, and I won't take the time to go into all the details, plus I don't remember all of the details, but ostensibly, some of these laws were designed to protect the women and the baby and to prevent this from happening and from putting women in a very vulnerable position like this. However, there was no corresponding punishment for the man. However, whatever man a woman named when she was in labor, whatever man she named as being the father, it was taken as truth that that was the father. So that could be good or bad, but that person was supposed to be held accountable. But that man was not punished in any way. They were not imprisoned. They were not fined. They were required to support the child and pay upkeep for the child. So that's a positive, but that's merely expecting them to do what they should already do. That's not punishing. So there was definitely a double standard there. And in the way that rape and sexual assault cases were handled very often because of politics and other things at play, many factors actually, so many factors go into it. Very often men would just get away with it, or they would never even be charged in the first place. So that is all an unfortunate reality, and shining the light on that through fiction is fantastic. And I appreciated that about this story. However, the part that I did not appreciate about the book was that the author, through the main character's perspective, because it's first person, so we're, hearing the main character's thoughts, whatever. Throughout the story, despite the fact that she had a wonderful relationship with her husband, and a relationship that was clearly portrayed as being based on mutual love and respect. She had 3 adult male children and 1 teenage boy, in addition to her daughters. And she had pretty good relationships with most of them as well. But throughout the book, the author made a point of this main character, Martha Ballard, making snide and often bitter remarks, casting aspersions on the male race in general. And that's the part that I just find frustrating, because one would hate for the same thing to be done in reverse, right? For men to make disparaging remarks, casting all women into the same net and not accepting that there are good and bad women, right? Or women who do this and women who don't do this, whatever this is. But she would literally just make these disparaging remarks, snide remarks, bitter remarks about men and their tendencies and blah, 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 all this stuff. Casting a wide net that included all men in one fell swoop, presumably including her husband and children, because they were men. And that did not sit well with me at all. And it was always a kind of like a roll your eyes, dismissive attitude towards men about everything and anything. So that aspect it just grates on me. I don't enjoy reading that kind of thing. And like I said, I appreciate casting the light on genuine issues, genuine specific flaws in a system. In particular instances like this one, where the man was acquitted and by all accounts should not have been. So that, I mean, please shine a light on that. Let's talk about that. But let's not then assume, let's not paint all men with that same brush, because that is doing a disservice to our fellow men. And it's arrogant too, because it comes from a place thinking that women are somehow perfect. That's what it seems like you're saying. If you're going to like just call all men awful, then you must be coming from a place that all women are not awful, right? That's the assumption behind that perspective. That was my issue with that one. And now I have talked long enough about this book. Overall, I'm settling, I'll probably give it 4 stars on Goodreads. That will be the rating that I settle on. Depending on the minute, I might think of it more as 3.5 stars. But in terms of actual enjoyment while I was reading, it was closer to 5 stars. Like there was a lot about it to enjoy. I enjoyed the actual story and I wanted to finish it. I wanted to find out what happened. And now I'm very interested to learn more about Martha Ballard and her story. I do recommend it. I do have some caveats. It was, for me, it didn't cross a line, but I know that there are some people who are watching who would not appreciate some of the intimate scenes that are described, particularly between the husband and the wife in this story. Now, most people on Goodreads who love this book and who are my friends on BookTube and who are similar to me in their preferences and reading material, and we prefer to read clean material, many of them agree with me that it didn't cross the line, it was fine, but I know that there are some people who would not appreciate even the level that was there. So there's that. And there also was some cussing. So that was not, again, it wasn't enough for me to stop reading the story. It wasn't gratuitous. It wasn't excessive. It was just sprinkled in there. So, and there's definitely, the main story is about sexual assault and it is described. So you will want to be aware of that if you prefer not to read books like that. So, which I totally get. So those are my thoughts about the book, and I will probably end this here. So I'm currently reading Pamela, and I'm actually enjoying it. It's much more readable, easy to read than I thought that it would be. So I'm actually really enjoying that. Got to read it while my sister was at the doctor's office today, and so I will continue reading that, but I don't think I'll finish anything. So I will wrap this up here, but I do want to show you one thing real quick. So I mentioned last week that with my Christmas money, I ordered the annotated versions of all of Austen's major novels. And as of today, I finally have all of them. So real quick, I just want to show you. Here is the Pride and Prejudice, Persuasion, Mansfield Park, which is, wow, that's a lot of annotations there. Northanger Abbey, I love that. And this one, oh my, chunker. Emma, and I love that. The black. I don't know why this one is black and none of the rest are, but it is kind of gold. I like the cover. And then Sense and Sensibility. I am all set for our Jane Austen celebration this year. My only problem is my Jane Austen shelf is now full. And I have some plans. You can see I have the IKEA Billy shelves. And you can see that some of them, it may not be easy to tell the proportion here, but some of them, like this one right here where my finger is pointing, that one is too tall. So I need to get, I think if I get 3 or 4 more of the shelves, like just the shelf itself, I can separate them into sizes that work better for the books that I have. And also these shelves here, this where my finger's pointing right here is way too deep. That's my actually, no, that's not my Austen one. That's when I have special editions of books, whatever. But that one, and then its corresponding shelf on the other side, it's just way too deep and it's so completely impractical for the books that I have. So I'm going to get some extra shelves to insert into there. So that will hopefully make my shelf space a little more usable. But also I think in the meantime, I have some more shelving that I can figure out downstairs and utilize to figure out a good place to put these now that I have them. Because they're actually a little bit bigger than I anticipated altogether. Let me show you the stack. I mean, that's a lot of book right there. So I need to find a place to put it. So that's one of my next projects. So anyway, all right, this has been long enough. If you are still here, thank you so much for staying with me and watching. And I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about anything that I have talked about this week and anything that I have done and anything. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below and I will see you next time. Bye.